Hi, today it's gonna be another one of the videos where I just talk about an art topic over time-lapse. And today time-lapse is 3 pixel wings drawings, which are long overdue. The first one I started over a year ago, and then I finished it months later, and the other 2 I did months after that, which is now. And as you probably noticed, the drawing of Musa doesn't start from the beginning, and that's because at first I didn't plan it to be pixel art, and what I think happened is I made a new file, copied the sketch, and drew over it, and I have no idea where the original file is. So apologies for that. But let's get into the actual topic of today's video, shall we? So I wanted to talk about some things that I wish I knew when I was just starting out, when I started to treat art seriously. Hopefully these will help you a little if you are a beginner artist now. This is also a part 1 because this video would be too long. I only have 5 points in this one and I think they're really broad. But let's get into it now. First thing is something that I think I struggled with the longest, and it's knowing what supplies to pick. And I don't mean deciding whether you want to use colored pencils or watercolors or something else. I mean having awareness about the quality and the type of the supply that you're picking to do what you want to do. I know this may sound confusing, so let me give you an example. When I was a beginner, I liked to draw realistic portraits. First with a pencil, then I started to look into colored pencils. And at first, I would just draw on a regular printer paper with some generic colored pencils that I've had since primary school. And then I found a blog written by an artist that I think was fairly popular in Poland back then. But the most important thing was that she drew the same things as me. And she was quite good at it, so I felt like I could trust her. And she recommended Kohinoor pencils, but also said that the hardness and feel of colored pencils is something very personal. And it is true, but being super inexperienced, I just thought, okay, the pencils I have now are hard, so I should go for harder ones. Because for whatever reason, I liked working with them, and I almost bought some really cheap, super hard pencils. I don't even remember why I didn't, but I went for the Kohinoors after all. And it was a good call because I liked them more. But there was one more issue left. The paper. The blogger said that simple printer paper is fine, so I was like, cool, so paper doesn't matter that much. So I just kept drawing on whatever I had available, and in art stores I would pick the cheapest, thinnest paper because it was $2 for 100 pages and had a pretty drawing on the cover. So I thought that was a step up from the printer paper that I was using before. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I stumbled upon someone else's review of the paper I bought being optimistic about it, and guess what? They said it was terrible. I was shocked when I read that they said that the paper was too thin for colored pencils, wouldn't let you layer colors well, or that there's a waxy film on it after you draw. These were all the things that I thought were normal and that I'm just bad at drawing. So of course I bought better paper and the difference was huge. And obviously you won't know if you like any art supplies until you try them out, but it certainly helps to be aware of what's generally considered good in your budget range. Which is another issue that I have faced in the beginning. I tried to get everything cheapest, not realizing how that impacts the quality. That's not to say that you should get the most expensive supplies possible. Try to find a good balance between the quality that will satisfy you and the price you are willing to pay. Another part of this issue, and I promise this is the last one and I will move on to the next point, is making sure that you're actually getting the art supplies that you want. and when you're starting out, that may get confusing. For example, when I found out about Copic markers, I loved the idea of them and I wanted to get something similar since they were way too expensive for me back then. And I started looking at water-based markers. And when I fixate on something, I will search for it for days until I find what I want. What I didn't realize though is that alcohol and water-based markers are two completely different things. To me, a marker was a marker. So I wasted a whole lot of time looking for something I wasn't interested in. So yeah, don't be like me. Instead of spending hours trying to find a cheaper substitution, spend that time finding out more about the supply that you're interested in. Next thing I wish I knew was not comparing myself to others. I know this one is really hard because you see your favorite artists making amazing pieces, and then you look at your art and you just feel sad or angry because your art doesn't look like theirs. But what you don't know is that your favorite artist probably felt or still feels the same. They also were beginners once. They didn't just wake up one day and started drawing at the level they're at now. It probably took them many years of drawing to be good, but you don't see that. Or even if they did improve drastically very quickly, or they're much younger than you, that still doesn't matter. Their journey is not your journey. Everyone is different, and if everyone learned new things at the same rate, that would be really weird. Now, if you look at someone else's art and you feel positive about it, like, wow, I want to draw like this, and it makes you motivated to work and get better, I think that's good. As long as you don't get frustrated that maybe you don't see the results as quickly as you'd hoped. Another way to compare yourself in a good way is to compare yourself to yourself from the past. We often get so wrapped up in seeing the flaws of our current art and thinking what is missing in it that we forget where we started and how far we've got. I especially like to look at my old drawing of Rihanna from 2012 and compare it to my art of Billie Eilish from 2019. I don't have any newer realistic drawings, but still, that's a 7-year progress, and I think that's pretty good. But to give you a more recent example, here are some of my older art and recent pieces. But I'd still advise you to compare your artwork with caution, as you might find yourself stuck and feel like you're not making progress at all. But I promise you, you're still moving in the right direction. Progress isn't linear and it might take you some time to see it. Next up, I wanted to talk about failure. Yes, you will fail. A lot. And this is a good thing. And it's not only gonna happen when you're a beginner. Every artist fails no matter what skill level they're at. You might think, but this artist that I follow on Instagram always posts such pretty drawings and I never see anything but from them. Well, you don't see the dozens of sketches that they discarded because they weren't happy with them. You don't know how long they struggled to get this piece that you love so much right. You only see what's on the surface. The great thing about it is that other people don't have to know about your failures either. Your bad sketches can stay hidden in your sketchbooks, or if you do digital art, they can be erased. This mindset is usually what helps me when I feel bad about not being able to draw anything good for a longer period of time. Furthermore, failing is an important part of making progress. If you can notice that something is wrong with your drawing, that means you can change it. If you thought everything you make is great, there will be no room for improvement. So next time you want to try something new, whether it is a new style or new art supply, go for it and let yourself be bad at it. Another point I think is also very important, and it's knowing who to take criticism from. As an artist, you'll have to deal with many different people trying to insert their opinions about your art. And while I did talk in a previous video how annoying it is when people do it unasked, You will need to swallow your pride or calm your nerves and ask for critique if you want to improve. Because a lot of the times, you are your worst critic. And that can go both ways. You may think your drawing or a part of it is great. Or the contrary, you might not realize how good it is. That's because we can't be fully objective about our art. It's simply impossible, so it's important to find someone that will look at what you've made in a more differentiated way. I am aware that it might be hard. I hated criticism for the longest time and I just avoided it. I almost didn't go to an art school because I didn't want to have my art exposed and just out there for everyone to look at it and judge it and tell me everything that's wrong with it. And it was really hard in the beginning. I would see critique as a confirmation that I don't belong and I shouldn't be there. But I quickly realized that that wasn't the case. The teachers were there to help me grow and release all my potential. I also realized that since they would point out mistakes that I didn't see right away, my improvement was much quicker than when I would try to figure out everything on my own. But there was one teacher that I didn't really like because I felt that they weren't giving me the critique I needed. While other teachers could look at my art and designs and see which way I should go for it to be beneficial for me, and considering my background and style and what I like to create, that one teacher just kept focusing on what they personally didn't like and what they would like to see from me. This resulted in me just half-assing most of the assignments, and I think they noticed that because eventually they were like, that's fine, when grading my stuff. Thankfully, that class was during my last year in uni, so I knew that I could disregard what they were telling me because I already knew which direction I wanted to go. And this is why you need to be mindful of who you allow to critique your art and whose advice to take to your heart and whose to ignore. And I know as a beginner you might be thinking, okay, but what if I don't know whose advice to take? So here are some tips that might help you figure it out. First and foremost, they should also be artists. You can't get help from someone who doesn't have experience in art, as they won't be able to point out specifics and don't have their eyes trained as an artist would. It also has to be an artist more experienced than you, obviously. The critique itself should focus on specific technical issues like the hand is too small or the light is wrong, etc., rather than, oh, I don't like this art style. And make sure they are in it to help you and want to see you grow, and they're not just letting you know what's wrong with your art just to stroke your ego or make you feel bad. And finally, the fifth thing that I wish I knew: don't get stuck on finding a style. So many new artists are so focused on finding an art style that they either spend too much time watching how-to videos instead of drawing, or they do draw but neglect other more important aspects. And I think that's a little backwards. Some people think that to draw, they first have to find an art style, when in reality, you need to first draw and be learning how to draw, and style will come naturally as a product of you gaining experience as well as consuming other people's art. And I believe the only way to be able to develop an actual art style is to learn fundamentals, anatomy, color theory, etc. But of course, I don't mean that you only should draw anatomy and you shouldn't draw for fun, because that would be really boring. You should do these things simultaneously, and I find that method brings the best results, at least for me. Also, you might have seen one of these videos where a person advises you to pick 5 artists that you enjoy and choose one thing that you like the most in each of their styles. So say from first you pick how they draw eyes, from another the way they use colors, and so on. I don't think people make these videos anymore, but I'd say they were rather popular a few years back, and I really don't think following that advice is helpful. Even more, I'd say they could be harmful because you're just Frankensteining someone else's work, probably in a mindless way, and then you either get a weird looking art or just another lowish looking one. And lowish is great, but it's her art style, and you should try to figure out something on your own rather than just piecing together famous artist styles. So yeah, just focus on your fundamentals first, and then you will find your art style. Well, this was a little more rambly than I expected, but I just had a lot to say about this topic because I know that it's sometimes really hard to navigate through art world and it gets confusing. But I hope that this video helped you at least a little. And if it did, it would mean a lot to me if you liked it and subscribe to my channel. But yeah, that is it for today. Next video will most likely be the part 2. So stay tuned and I will see you in the next one. Bye!